Technology is a means, not an end in itself. And technology, by definition, is by, of, and for people. And if you're developing technology that isn't specifically about making things better for people, then you're doing something that's not good. That's not constructive. You're doing something that's a negative contribution, right? So if your software is surveilling people, you're writing code, right, to identify people, and your boss is telling you it's criminals, but you keep seeing that it's being applied, right, to normal citizens, you need to start asking yourself what you're doing. Wait.
The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you're ambitious, but are manual tasks like admin, lead generation, nurturing, and onboarding holding you back from truly scaling your business? Imagine saving dozens of hours every week, freeing you to deepen client relationships and execute high-impact strategy. Our clients aren't just imagining it. They're saving countless hours per week and doubling their revenue within months. We custom-build AI automation systems that eliminate the grind. From effortless lead generation and nurturing to seamless onboarding, we give you back the most valuable resource, your time, so you can focus on building those vital human connections and driving strategic growth. Stop letting repetitive tasks limit your potential. It's time to build a business that works for you, not the other way around. Ready to unlock your true scaling power? Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free AI audit call today to discover how you can save time and double your revenue. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Intelligence Forge YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
Systemic innovation, bridging physics, engineering, and business transformation in the AI era. Welcome to the Intelligence Forge, where we explore how leaders are leveraging technology and intelligence to transform their businesses. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Dr. Garrick with us, a fascinating guest who's bridged the world of high-energy fixes, Fortune 100 enterprise, and clean technology venture. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Emmanuel. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate you being on.
Of course. I want you to start, Doctor, by first introducing yourself. You have one of the most unique professional journeys I've come across, from earning your doctorate in high energy fixes to now leading systemic transformation in clean technology. Could you please introduce yourself, your company, and help our listener understand how a physicist ends up orchestrating business transformations?
It's a good question. The answer is a pretty long story, but the root of it is that I ended up starting a family essentially as I was starting grad school. And I was working on my PhD in particle physics, searching for proton decay, which is a mechanism that would, if observed, would be indicative of extensions to the standard model, right? So sort of at the boundaries of where the standard model of physics explains things, and then things that it doesn't explain that we don't understand. That's where I was focused on as I had come out of undergrad school. But I had a background that was a little bit unusual, rural environment, but bridging into the suburban urban communities and straddling have and have not societies and some other things, right? That gave me kind of a unique perspective.
Right.
I was fortunate that my research in graduate school was on this really interesting experiment looking for proton decay in this really interesting environment, which was Iron Range of Minnesota, in an iron mine that was a half-mile underground, where the detector was put there to shield it from noise, right, from background noise. So right there, just the idea of what it was brings this system concept to the front, right, of consciousness, because you're placing a detector deep underground in some of the densest rock on the planet to block it from the background noise that interferes with your ability to see reality, right, or to measure the truth you want. So that's how I started.
Right. Okay.
But I also fell in love and had kids at that same time, and had young children when I was in grad school, and that was a pretty tough financial burden. And a friend of mine had gone into business in the magnetic recording industry. He had taken a master's and gone into engineering and had become a manager in the engineering team, and offered me a job. And so I took a job as I had finished all of the requirements to go pursue my PhD and write my dissertation, but I still had my dissertation left to write and defend. So it took me 4 years of doing engineering work where I was making decent money as an engineer, test and characterization and analysis in a exotic device context setting, right? Design and fabrication setting. And in the side, then I finished my PhD thesis. And it was in my PhD work that I first became acquainted with neural networks. And that was my introduction to what we are calling artificial intelligence today. And in the time since, I've had extensive involvement with it in various guises. But that's really the essence of it. So I went from researching standard model physics to engineering advanced technology devices used to record data, and that launched my career in industry, and then that led to advancement through management and so on. And then I eventually went from the corporate engineering world to the startup environment in the solar energy business and was involved with multiple solar startups, all of which ended up having problems at one point or another, right, and no longer exist, but all of which had very interesting technologies and really interesting people that were part of the team in the process of bringing it forward. And that was my introduction to the entrepreneurship world, right, and bringing forward things from scratch, whereas my corporate experiences had been on a legacy industry, right? A legacy company that had, all kinds of history associated with it, right? And DNA, right? In the culture and things like that. So that transition happened at the downturn, right? At the Great Recession time period, right? When there was a lot of upheaval, and I moved into the entrepreneurship world. And then that led me on kind of a crazy odyssey through these different companies, which then took me into the accelerator world around clean technology, right? Coaching and training and helping other people develop their business idea, their product concept, and going through that whole process of bringing companies through the early phases, right?
Right.
Figuring out what they're about, what they're developing, how they're going to do it, and what their markets are, and so on. So that's how I ended up here. In this last few years, what appears to have become valuable was something that I started as more of a frustration project, which was applying the skills that I had developed around yield analysis, failure analysis, why some products work and some products don't, or why some designs work, some don't, right? Why some processes work and some don't. Going through that whole thing, FA, reliability analysis, quality systems analysis, and all those things, and applied those to some of the things I was noting in the startup field, like the really lousy yield, right? They'll have. I mean, we pump billions and billions of dollars right into the university and research labs and so on. We pour money into SBIRs, all the time. And out of that, we take this very little bit, right, and say, oh, that's worth investing in more, right? That's worth doing more. Well, this doesn't make any sense, right? No company, if you were to step back and look at the process as a company and say that the product are thriving enterprises, right? Thriving going concerns that are producing value with good product, how is 10% or lower yield a sustainable thing, right? So I looked into that. I started to study that. And I started applying the tools that I had used to bring other products forward, right, and resolve other product problems on this more general issue, systemic issue. And that led me to some realizations and some understandings and the development of a model that I'm now calling systemic innovation intelligence.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much for breaking everything down. But let's look at where it got started. Let's go back to the beginning, for a moment. How did you start Physical Systems Incorporated back in 2014? In terms of the funding that was available to you back then, in terms of the resources that was available to you, because that most of the reason why a lot of business die or fail within the first 1 year or two is because of lack of resources. But how did you pull that through? And then fast forward to today, without getting into some specific details, if you prefer, can you also share where the business stands right now in terms of your revenue, your size, your team size, what your expansion plans are for the next 12 months?
Yeah, so let me start at the back end and go back, work my way back to that beginning, because I want to be clear here. My business is not some world-beating huge going concern, right? My business originally started as a brand designed around this skill set that I had acquired, right? Of analyzing data and organize engineering data systems and engineering information systems, which then led to engineering knowledge systems to bring new products out, solve product issues, solve process issues. It was all very routine early on, right? For many years in that my advancement in this large company that made magnetic recording products, I had responsibility for analyzing the data right from the operations and the processes to figure out what was going right and what was going wrong, do more of the former, less of the latter, solve these issues and so on. I developed my concept, physical systems as a business, with that at the core, right? Data.
Right.
And again, that was in 2014, as you noted, and it was really just me putting a marker out there, so to speak, hanging a shingle, if you want to call it that, right? In a certain sense, to say, hey, I know how to do these things and I can help you do them better. And I've done it in a way that strips away all of the overhead and gets right to the heart of the matter, et cetera, et cetera. And my focus was and generally has been on making better advanced technology devices and products, where primarily, but always with an intensive software component, either as an embedded controller system or as the software that's part of the advanced processes that are controlling its production and the whole lab to fab to field connection with regard to keeping control of, are you meeting requirements, and all these things. That's how it started. And what it is today is really just a fractional technology services business, right? So I'm a seat for a company that actually is the attempt to bring back one of the solar companies that I helped start, because technology is really great and it's got a good future, but it fell into the jaws of the financial ruin, right, of the mid-teens and was idle. Fortunately, it wasn't liquidated. I mean, some people required the assets and I've connected with them and I'm helping bring them back. I do a couple of other smaller engagements with other companies to help them do a techno-economic analysis, pilot out, some part of technology path, whether they should pursue, an SBIR or whether they should pursue some other type of grant, funding or these types of things, competitions and so on, which is really, I'd say, an informal advisory / coaching consulting effort, right? Really about helping people bring their technology ideas into better MVPs, right? Or better market fit, right? Or expanding their market. It's very small. And my revenues are, modest. I'll just put it down. And I'm at a point now in my career and my age where I'm of course the background conditions are a part of this. Yeah. My attention and focus on making the next greatest little widget, right? Or more efficiently generating electricity or storing data or computing or whatever. I'm a little less interested in that every day and a little more interested in how are we going to get through this problem that we're facing of this egregious inequity and the assault, right, on our institutions and democracies and the apparent race to enthrall ourselves with digital tools. Right? So that's a little bit more mission-oriented, which then opens up some coaching and some mentoring and advising. And so I'm in a process of not taking on any more clients on the let me help you fix your product, right, or let me help you get your product plan up and running or whatever, and focusing more on how do we position ourselves right through this period of turmoil and transition that now includes AI as this, inescapable reality, right, that you have to deal with, whatever you believe of it, whatever, your sentiments are about good or bad or indifferent, it's there. What do we do? And where are we going? Right. And if I can help people work through that in a way that leaves them heading in a direction that's more sustainable,
right,
then I think I'm doing a good service. So my focus right now is on helping people find their purpose in a way that violate their precepts on the assumption that their precepts favor inclusiveness, equity, justice, and that business can be a force for that. It doesn't have to be a tool of extraction, right? And use technology as a means to take from others.
All right.
Is morally wrong. We want to do something different. So that's really where I'm focused as I go into the latter stage now in my career.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. All right. You've operating at the intersection of physical system, data analytics, and business operation. So beyond standard LLMs like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, what specific AI tools or technology are you currently deploying in your consulting practice or at Global RAIS to manage or to maintain your competitive edge?
Well, so my business and myself specifically, I'm not working on an AI tool. I am engaged with a couple of people who are working on AI applications and implementing them in the same traditional area that I've worked in, which is operational excellence.
Okay.
Quality systems, product performance management, requirements, orchestration, these types of things that go towards making a process that's very highly effective, efficient, responsive, resilient, all those things.
Okay.
I spent a lot of years automating decisions and discrimination, good, bad, good enough, right? These kinds of things that with under product and process capability. And in that sense, you can call it artificial intelligence. I call it analytical decision making.
All right.
And using computers to sift through all of the observational records that we have about things and identify the key relationships and alert us to abnormalities or exceptions and those kinds of things. I mean, that's very routine, right? And that's not really what we call artificial intelligence today, but it all is really, right? Definition of it is all that is. On the other hand, right, what everybody calls AI today, LLMs specifically, it's a big piece, but it's just a part of it. Right? So I'm working with some people and associated with some people and helping guide their own development and application scoping, right, and fit, if you will, the PMF, right, the product, what it's doing. That includes both LLM tools and others.
Right.
I'm not actively involved, but I'm aware of some other work that's not LLM related at all. That's a different approach to intelligence. And that I'm trying to support without necessarily being deeply engaged in it personally. But here again, my focus is less on what the tool is and how we're designing it in detail, right, specifically, and more about what is our real purpose for these tools? What do we really want? And what do we mean when we're talking about intelligence and we say we want to have intelligent tools? What does that really mean? And I think lots of people are talking and there's a lot of nonsense, frankly, right out there about it. But I mean, let's just get to the heart of the matter. First of all, the core of the AI marketing movement appears to have woefully inadequate respect for actual natural intelligence, including humans, but also beyond human. I see very little comprehensive inclusion of what it is to comprehend and to know and to interact with the world around you in that space, in this world that's just totally dominated by the LLM discussion and language model. There are some people who believe that, language is sort of the nexus, right, of everything we know. I just think that's not correct because we know so little of the languages of the other animals on this planet, for example, and they're intelligent. They're obviously intelligent and we don't know how to talk to them. And maybe AI that we've developed through LLM is going to help that. I don't think so. So I happen to have some significant statistical expertise, having been a higher vertical physicist, working on a phenomenon that had a rate of 10 to the 34. Okay, so just you want to talk about black swans, just go look on decay, right? And you have to cube the universe, right, to find one, right, if you will. And the statistics of the language models are limiting. They're inherently limiting. Right? If you talk about the fact that ultimately what's being measured is this distance, right? Remember, statistics is a tool for measurement. Right? It is not anything other than a tool for measurement. And it's not a particularly fine tool in many cases, right? And every time you measure something, there's an error. And every time you combine the results of things you've measured, that error adds in quadrature, right? It's the square root of the sum of the squares. If I measure two lengths and I want to then consider the error of the total length, it's the square root of the sum of the squares of the errors of the individual lengths. Like every time an LLM is computing this distance, It's got an error, and then it adds it to other distances or compare. Yeah, it's calculations. It's compounding error. Cannot, will not ever get rid of those errors. It's impossible. And the people who say so either don't know or they don't want to say that. Right? And that's a problem. So there's a whole world around that I'm trying to work around, if you will, by focusing on what do we really mean by intelligence? What is it really doing for us? What are the real actions that it's happening? As I advised a colleague who's developing some tools, and I see a framework, right? Go implement this, and this is how we can manage process documents, right? Or quality documents, right? Or records of compliance, right? Or something like that. Imagine that in a manufacturing environment. I say, but what is the AI thing, whatever you want to call it, whether it's an LLM or a specific world model that's been tuned around a specific knowledge base of how to build lasers, right? Or something like that, for example, which is as an example. What is it doing that wasn't being done before or is being done in such a different way that the new state that we're operating in is markedly different than the old state? In other words, we're not just shuffling data in and out of a system and calling it intelligent, right? And saying, aha, it's AI because it's processing data with a different set of crunching routines, right, than some other machine learning algorithm might have done otherwise, but the result's the exact same, right? Yeah. It's the same basic thing with maybe I get a little bit of human feel out of it because the way the LLMs have been programmed to actually communicate like they're talking to you, right, to people.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out where we're actually saving time, saving money, right, but not in a way that says, okay, I don't need John over there to enter data into that system anymore. Oh, I'm gonna play him off and send him home. I don't want to say John now can process 10 times the amount of data, and he doesn't have to worry that it's full of this error.
Right.
Oh, John is more productive, right? John has increased the earnings for the company that increases his own revenue per employee and raised revenue per employee for everybody else. And I want to see people raising revenue per employee, not by reducing the denominator, but by increasing the numerator. And I want to increase the numerator, not by taking it from other people and eating their lunch, but by creating a bigger lunch, more people. Okay, so that's how I'm looking at it. Okay. Sorry for missing my metaphors up here.
Yeah, fantastic. You sum it up very well. Thank you so much. Here is the fun one. Yeah, the magic one question. If you could instantly improve one thing about your company's operation or maybe your client's operation, what would that be and why? What's that one friction point that keeps you up at night?
In a word, marketing, but not in the way that you may think initially when you hear that. I think that broadly we've marketed our way into a whole lot of less value. We've perfumed too many pigs and we've let too many valuable opportunities go by the wayside, and the opportunity costs are mounting because people have been conditioned to believe that scale is everything, sale is everything, fake it till you make it, or image is everything, right? And when I step back and I say, if you're going to look at the measures of the operation, how people feel, how they feel about the economy, what the real economy is actually doing, which right now GDP is grossly dominated by a relatively small portion of companies that are churning money around in deals that aren't really they're not really generating, they're transacting money and moving it around to make it look like something's happening, but that's not really creating more value. So in the big picture sense, people are unhappier. They have less security, less comfort. And I'm talking about the 90% now, right? I'm not talking about the few people who have been fortunate enough to really win, right, in this image economy. I'll call it the image economy, right? The data economy has become the image economy. Right? It presents something as though it's this great utility, but it's not. I mean, look, we all know that software is getting lousier over time. We all know what the word that Cory Doctorow has popularized, the word shittification around software. We know that there are fleets of programmers out there who do the code that leave you in a subscription trap, that drive you nuts because you can't get out and you can't cancel your subscription, right? And you can't find the help, right? Or you can't reach a person. People are doing that to other people. And we call that commerce. We call that business.
Yeah.
I'm completely against that. So if I could change one thing, it would be I want the marketers to shut up about being the greatest thing and selling all the wonderful things and scale and all this stuff and get back to value comes from our values. And right now, value measures a set of values that's pretty shallow. We are making our economy, we are making our lives shallower by the day with tech. We're not enriching it, we're starving. And millions of people are feeling this now more and more. And now with the fact that tech has invaded our government institutions in the form of Doge, it has hamstrung, disabled, undercut the systems that were at least keeping some level of equity and decency in place. You see now people are going to pay extraordinary amounts for their health insurance. We're going to have to go without. We're going to have to do it without. This is not getting better. This is not making the world a better place, right? And so I'm going to draw the simple correlation, knowing as well as anybody, right, that correlation is not causation. But I'm going to draw this correlation that says we're pumping out more and more software. We're saying all these great things are AI. Meanwhile, the world is going to hell around us. We're unhappy. We're miserable. We're at each other's throats. We can't afford anything, right? And we're falling behind the rest of the world. What do we do? And it's a problem, right? So again, I think there's a factor in that, and that's this modern manner that we have of telling ourselves everything's great, like it's a TV show. There's always a happy ending. There's always right. There's always a hero that's going to come through in the end. I always get another life. All I got to do is hit reset, and I get to go again. I think these things actually slowly condition us, right, to be the frog in the boiling pot.
But if I may come in, so in the nutshell, what will your magic wand be? To cancel marketing completely, or what exactly will you be proposing?
I would like to see value restored. And what I mean by that is that value is measured in ways that help people. Good. More people get comfortable. More people can afford a decent quality of life. So if you were put it in these terms, and if this is maybe a little bit more, I don't want to get too detailed or abstract. Think about, what a BOM is, right? A bill of materials. So let's say that society is a process to produce security, prosperity, a sense of comfort and belonging among the citizenry. Okay? Say it. That the idea for society is that everybody's going to have a better life, right? Not a worse.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Have a better life, not a worse. Not a life that's miserable and unhappy and defeating, and you feel like you're trapped. All stuff, right? So, what do the measures say about our progress on that? Our process is crying out that it's out of control. The indicators are blaring everywhere. The alarms are going off everywhere, right? It's time for the quality team to stop the process and say something's not right here. What that is coming back to saying what are we about, right? And what we've been conditioned for at least the last 50 years is it's all about me. My glory, my success, my accomplishments, my achievements, my striving drive the world. Through my advancement, there goes others. Listen, right? This focus on my personal maximization of my utility integrated and summed over everybody else out there doing that creates a better society is wrong, right? So what I would say, the magic wand which is turn off the personal desire to be a celebrity, right? Because that's the other toxic element of this. You got to be a celebrity. So I don't want the football players I'm watching to play football on every damn commercial about chips, soft drinks, or cars, or insurance. I don't need them.
Just show us the football. Show us the game.
It's like we've made celebrity culture as though it's something that's the way life is supposed to be. That's the point.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay, let's dive into systemic innovation in clean technology. You spent over 3 decades developing everything from exotic device to photovoltaic system. From your vintage point, what are the biggest systemic challenges preventing clean tech companies from scaling effectively from lab to market?
It's the fact that people want to protect markets. And the people who want to protect markets the most by limiting or isolating or blocking the development of new markets use as cover their screaming about free markets. In the solar industry, it's really simple, right? People don't want to give up the money that they've got from oil and gas, right? It's actually a systemic issue because so much of the nation's savings are in companies that are dependent on the system of fuel, right, of energy. And so it's not a trivial transition that we're in by any means. But there's another reason to do it aside from just making more energy at lower cost, right? You've obviously clearly been able to do, and we could do more and more and more, right? The impact that the previous prevailing methods of producing energy have had on the climate are extreme, severe. We're known. We've been lied to about it for decades. It's an existential threat, if not to our actual physical lives, certainly to our livelihoods, right? And what society and civilization is going to look like in the future, right? If we don't arrest the increase in temperature and prevent the rise of sea levels to the point where massive cities of tens of millions of people are now underwater, or the coastal populations and all these things. I mean, we have immediate reasons and for us to do this, and people still work against the changes that are being developed to improve that. Some are in denial. That's a different problem, all right? The denial problem, I don't want to get into that specifically right now. I'm focusing more on the people who know what's happening, but it would be not in their best interest, in their narrow scope definition of their best interest to do that. And they don't care what the effect is on everybody else. It's the same thing. I mean, we got people telling us about what the future is going to be like while they're building bunkers.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, let's look at something different. You've integrated governance, protocol, and decision support system across multiple organizations. Here's a disruptive thought. Most consultants sell their time and expertise, you know that. But you've built analytical processes that serve as proxies for human intelligence. Have you considered productizing any of your system model or decision support framework into software tool that could scale beyond your personal consulting hours? What will it take to transform your consulting IP into a scalable product?
Well, that's a great question. The answer is yes, I have. And I have talked with people over the last few years about different ideas that would be applied to these. And there's a large number of people out there all working out different approaches to tackle parts of the problem that I'm talking about, bringing people together. But the core of all that, just to stay on focus here, is teaching and training. Right. There's an element of teaching and training within my own innovation model, systemic intelligence innovation model, that's part of the cycle of sustained innovation, which is really about trying to make change rather than have change make the future. So approach it that you want to make the future rather than have the future make you. And the world is what we make it, right? Was what the main character Ellie in Sagan's Cosmos. We want to reconfigure the world around us to meet some vision, right? To meet some purpose, right? To function in some way that we think is going to be better. That's what innovation really is, right? Innovation is the ability to reorder matter and redistribute energy in ways that don't naturally happen probabilistically, and we reconfigure things to meet our needs in our time scheme, right? Where we want it, when we want it. So like irrigation, it's about moving water where we want it, when we want it, not wait for the annual rains, the flood the plain or whatever, right? Very basic innovation, but it's an example to me of the most basic definition of it, which is reordering the world to meet our needs. And guess what? Other creatures on this planet do it. Other creatures reconfigure the world around them to changing. Beavers, for example, and muskrats, right? These kinds of things. people say, well, that's not really innovation. I would say it is. It is in the context of that creature's mold, right? That creature's understanding. It's moving the objects around it where it can from the context of its location so that it changes the way that system works. So it has a safer place, a drier place, better food, right? More readily available by whatever, right? Whatever the reasons. That's what we do. That's what innovation is. So figuring out how to do that, learning how to do that in a systemic way, right? Or a systematic way now to now where you're going from, I want to do it everywhere all the time to I want to do it with this particular cadence and these specific protocols and so on. To go from systemic to systematic, that's the training part. That's the teaching part. Now, we've been building a culture here where it's the individual heroic was, hero is the center, right, of all of these stories, right? The narrative is a narrative of I. I think that's part of our problem. That's why we're in trouble we're in right now, is we've put way too much stock in the narrative of I. We need to put stock in the narrative of we. So the platform, a tool that I am talking about would be something like a collaborative platform, a co-development tool focused on problem solving, comprehension, understanding, and it would be designed to equip people, enable them, so give them the tools that they need, right, to make change, enable them by showing them how the processes, and then empower them by helping create a condition or environment that allows them to do that. So in my view, going up against the big tech platforms these days is all but impossible. So it's like you have to take the mindset of like the tree that's going to grow in the rock. The rock. I'm not sure. I'm going to cling inside of this big rock, right, in this little crevice of dirt in this rock. But one day I'm going to go up to a big tree and I'm going to dig this rock in half.
Yeah, that's it. Well, thank you so much. As we wrap up, just in 60 seconds, what's one piece of advice you will give another technical founder or consultant who is trying to maybe scale, their business or do something right based on some of the things you've explained and you've been able to analyze for us? Is that one piece of advice that you give them?
Technology is a means, not an end in itself. And technology, by definition, is by, of, and for people. And if you're developing technology that isn't specifically about making things better for people, and you're doing something that's not good, that's not constructive, you're doing something that's a negative contribution. So if your software is surveilling people, if you're writing code, right, to identify people, and your boss is telling you it's criminals, but you keep seeing that it's being applied, right, to normal citizens, you need to start asking yourself what you're doing. You're doing it.
Right. Okay, thank you so much. If our listener want to connect with you, they want to learn more about Physical Systems Incorporated, or maybe about your work with Global RAIS, what's the best way for potential client or collaborator to reach out to you?
I don't have a website up right now because I have ideas that I don't want being extracted by LLM training engines, right? So I took my website off a few years ago and have kept it pretty limited. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? I'm pretty easy to find there. And I made, a fair amount of comments in a community that talks about AI on a regular basis. I have a web page, I have a LinkedIn page for my company. It's very simple, very basic. I don't put much in there, but that's how you get a hold of me. Or you can email me at GMV, Good Management Value, at physicist, PHYSISYST.com.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. This has been absolutely fascinating. I know there's a lot of information loaded in everything that you have been able to break down. And I think our audience will learn a lot. And for sure, I know that people will want more clarity. They will want more information from you. And I know definitely some people will definitely contact you to get more details. And I think something that stood out for me is that you have your way of thinking in terms of how we should do things, not just because of ourselves alone, but about everyone else. I mean, creating a world that is available for everyone, not for few. And I think that's one of the things that I take away from everything you analyze, especially in your Magic One, because it's easy for one big company to monopolize something and they are the only one getting it done. And people have no choice but just to pay for it. Whereas there are people who could not, at the end of the day, pay for something, some little, to better their life. And I think if we could also put that at the back of our mind, putting other people's in mind to say, well, there are other people that needs to benefit or to be able to afford something, I think we could live a good life for everybody. I think for me, that's my takeaway. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We really appreciate you and we want to wish you well. And if there's any development, please let's get to know and we will also help you promote it. But thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks for listening, Emmanuel. I appreciate the opportunity to share my views. I realize these aren't specifically business insights and tips and tricks, right, for people to do it, but I hope it brings people to a point where they're thinking a little bit more about coming back to my point about marketing, and maybe I'll wrap it up this way. The "you can have it all" message, right, that we've been drilling into people on all levels for so long. How's that working out for you?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Good question. Thank you so much, Doctor. We really appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right.
You didn't quit your day job to become a full-time admin assistant. The Intelligence Forge podcast is sponsored by Permasize AI Forge. At Permasize AI Forge, we know you didn't start your business to spend 60 hours a week on paperwork, chasing leads, and managing endless admin tasks. You started it to build something meaningful and serve your clients. But right now, you're trapped in the day-to-day grind instead of growing your business. What if I told you our clients are reclaiming 15, 20 hours per week, increasing their revenue by 30 to 50% within 6, 12 months, and finally getting their lives back? We don't just automate random tasks. We build custom AI systems that eliminate the bottlenecks choking your growth, from leads generation to lead, nurturing and management to project management to client follow-ups. Stop paying for an expensive, frustrating manual system. It's time to upgrade to strategic automation. Visit PermasizeAIForge.com and book your free business transformation strategy call today. Discover exactly how much time and money you're losing to manual processes and how to get both back. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Intelligence Forge, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode packed with game-changing insights. Your future automated business is waiting.